Hi, class. This is chapter 5, week 4. Let's start. In this chapter, we'll talk about project. We finished part of the supply chain management operation side. We'll go back again later on, but now we're going to focus on project and project management. So in this chapter, um, basically we will be uh, we will explain what a project are and how projects are organized. We're also going to evaluate the project using earned value management. We will analyze a project using the network planning models, and we're probably going to use some examples of it. And we're going to also talk about IT project management also. So project management, what is a project? Project is a series of related jobs usually directed towards some major output and requiring a significant period of time to perform. And when you do a group assignment, this is a project. When you do an individual assignment, this project, which is made of, takes time and takes a different stages of activities. What is a project management? A project management is usually planning, directing, controlling resources. And the resources could be a people, equipment, and material. In order to meet the technical, the cost, and the time constraint of a project. So any project is made of three things: technical, cost, and time. So the three things is things that delivers, and the cost and the timing. And why the project management is important. And project management is highly important for many reasons, but the most important reason is at the highest level of an organization. Management often involved in juggling a portfolio of projects. So there is so many projects going on, or there is a limited resources. So the management usually have a interest of juggling these portfolios management. So what type of projects are there in general? We have something called when we do a product changes, and once we do some process changes, same product, but the process is changing, and there is something called research and development and alliance and partnership when outsourcing something or somebody outsource something to us. Now, the deeper ones is breakthrough projects, and the less one is derivative project, which is, you improve some kind of a software, within the software, some functionalities or hands-on equipment. Now, a new product in the product management and a process change, a new process, definitely. A new core of technology when you're using some kind of a mobile application before you just used, an ERP or desktop application, and outsourcing your major activities. And then, as you said, the platform project is additional product families. You want to add one more or process in a graphic upgrade. Probably you add a new machine, and then research and development, you do an upgrade, which is we said as a mobile applications um, for service or something, a new software as you want to add, or select a new partner because you're the alliance or partner, which is a select a carrier or outsource or something like that. So the project itself, there are three types. There is a pure project, which is a self-contained teamwork, full-time on the project. So these are a team who put and do nothing else but delivering the project there. And then you get the functional project, which is responsibility for the project lays within the functional divisions. In the function, in a certain division, for example, HR is the within the HR is implementation of HR software, something like that. And of the firm. Employee from that division work on the project and usually only part-time. And then you get the metrics project, which is a blended of a pure project and functional project structures. People from a different functional area works on the project, possibly only as a part-time. So in the functional and the metrics project, you have what you call both of them, they work as a part-time. But in the functional project, you would find people from a different function sectors, they're involved in it. In the metrics project, people from different departments involved in the different one department involved in different projects involved in it. Now, the pure project, the advantage is the project manager has a full authority because it's like, group and he's in charge. They don't look outside. The team member report to one boss and shorten the communication line as usual, and team pride, motivation, commitment are very high to deliver these things, to do these things, because they're already clear part of the team. The disadvantage is duplication of resources because you need somebody to replace these people if you're going to put them in this product. And organizational goals and policies is ignored because they're focused on their project and they're part of that project. And there is usually when it's done, they don't do mostly the lack of technology transfer. They don't do technology transfer. And team members have no functional area home, so they're worried about after the work, whether they're gonna stay in or they leave. The other type, which is the functional structure of projects, as you see here. So there is a research and development, and they are working on 3 different projects, and in the engineering working on other 3 different projects. So they are kind of and there is a president on the top of it. And a team member can work on several projects, as we said. The technical expertise maintained in a functional area. So you might, in that engineering department, the functional area, the engineers are working on that. And the functional area is a home after the project completed. So this team who is working on the project, they are will be going staying in that location. And there is a lot of specialization in that field. Usually it goes for a project that is a very specialized also. But the disadvantage of it, the aspect of the project that are not directly related to the functional area get shortchanged because these guys are, for example, engineers are not very much interested in, say, part of what research and development is doing. So they're not paying so much attention to the other functionality, the other things away from what they have. And the reason because they're very well in their field. They know it well. That's one of the things. And then they're not motivated because they look at their own departmental or their personal needs there. The motivation of the team members is often weak. Need for the client is not looking at it because they are just focusing at their sector. So they're not worried about selling or marketing or anything else. Now, in the case of Matrix, the Matrix is basically is there is, let's assume there is a four people and there was another four people like this or this. And then when these four people comes in, like in this position, they are both comes in a certain work, but in this position, this person works in with this person. And it's like if this person comes in across is like whenever is the project like this, it depends on what he's working with. So the matrix is you changing probably the duties as the type of the project itself. Now, usually have a project manager on the top, but it has a better communication between the functional areas because it's a matrix and they are communicating with each other in each horizontal and vertical department. Um, Project manager are held responsible for the success. The duplication of resources is very minimized because they are, doing their work plus they're doing this project management fully utilized there. And functional home for the team members. So they, once the project goes live, they can, have it stay home and they can utilize this project. And the policies of a parent organization are followed. So the policy comes in from probably the CEOs to these project managers, and project manager goes to the functional and the technical employees. The disadvantage, there is too many bosses. So because in some places you are the somebody else, because we said like this, so at this case you have one boss, at this case you have one boss, at this case you have one boss. So it's like so too many bosses that you have. The success depend on the manager's negotiation skills. And this is why you sometimes when you do a matrix project, you always require at least one week every week or every 2 weeks a meeting with the CEOs and the management, and potential of sub-optimization. Now, organizing a project task is basically we have what you call SOW, which is a project start as a statement of work. So statement of work means SOW. It's a written description of the objective to be achieved, plus a brief statement of work to be done, and propose a schedule accordingly, which is a pre-proposed schedule. So the task is a further subdivision of the project. So when you have a project, you divide it to a task and then subtask and activities. And usually is no longer a task, no longer than several months, and performed by a single group or organization. So that you divide, you put the timing and you say this department will do this part or this part of the department will do this part. And work package, which is smaller than the task, and is a group of activity combined to be assignable to a single organizational unit. So we get the task, subtask, work package, and then it's assigned for certain, single organization unit. The project milestone is a specific event in the life of a project to reach at a certain point of time. So you've set up a timing when you deliver a project, and there is a project milestone, which is it is a sign you have accomplished certain level of the project, and it's important to reach that. And then there is what you call a work breakdown structure, or WC, WS, which is defined as, the hierarchy of the project task, the subtasks, and the work packages. So it's divide the one task and then which one is more important and which one is depend on what. So it's like, you divide it and then you have subtask and work package, as we said. And the activities is defined within the context of work breakdown and are a piece of work that consume times. Like let's say you're painting a house. Is the project delivered? No, not yet until the paint gets dry. That's when you can submit a project. So it is activity is something, not part of the whole activity. It's part of the waiting, but it has to be, delivered. So the breakdown, like for example, on the level, you say the program, and then what's your program? You want to put some kind of software, or you bring you more equipment, machineries to do that. And then there is two parts of the project. One project probably buying the machineries and setting it up, and the second part is making the a place for them, building. And then there is the project of task is you subtask it of shopping around, finding a machinery is a subtask, is you start negotiating, something like that. You break it down into a work packages, and could be going more deeper the more complex it is. And the second part is a project two, which is building a place for them, as also breakdown and goes down like this. So you drilling down, you go to the details, overview on the top, and then you go to the details of it. The other way of looking at it is this way, which is the scanning. I find it a little bit, too much information here, is like inside and in. But it's overall, if you look at it, is basically, it says one, which is stand for this, which is optical, for example, simulator design. You're looking at that. And then 1.1 is optical design, which is belong to this level. But when it comes to 1.2, it's a drilling which level is supposed to be done. So is, for example, if you're talking about 1.4 here, data recording and reduction equipment, which would be part of 1.4. So it's just a different way of looking at things, but I feel that the first one is much simpler, easier to look at it, and it's not much is used in the today market. But the most used one is the Gantt chart. And the Gantt chart is a very clear one who you can really divide your activities based on single and timing. So the chart provide an easily understood visual presentation. And then there is a software can be used to create such a Gantt chart. So you put dating and change it to a Gantt chart for you. A Gantt chart shows in a graphic manner the amount of the time involved in the sequence of activity, often referred to a bar chart, which is these are the ones, a bar chart. So here is the timing, and this is the activities, and you can, the contract negotiation takes that much, which is 2 weeks, and then contract sign takes 1 week or two, for 2 weeks. Long lead procurement, it's gonna give you, takes from you probably 8 weeks, but meanwhile you can do manufacturing and scheduling, and it's depend if it's connected to each other partially. So you divide this to the parts where it's delivered, and then we will talk about when it comes to the CPM later on. Then you get the bill of materials and the process. So it's really clear how time, when it's supposed to start and when it's supposed to be delivered. These are the samples of how you're looking at the project. And this is a PMI thing and a different way of looking at or at project management. And we will be talking about some of them. We're not going to go very deep in them, but we need to understand what is this all about, how you do a project management in general. Now, let's take an example of project management for information system. And there is over 100 companies offer a project management software. But the most famous one is Microsoft Project, which is, manage the mid-size projects. And then you get the Primavera, which is belong to Oracle, which is for mid-size to large. So Microsoft Project small to medium, and that medium to large is Primavera. And the good thing about the Microsoft Project is, integrated with other apps like emails and all the other things. In addition to scheduling tasks, resource must be assigned to a specific task through a software tool. So that's when you do a task, schedule task, you need the resources, which could be human, could be machineries, could be whatever. So it integrates the both together, is assigned to each other. And also software can be used to spot over allocation of resources. So if you're over allocating, it will show you that this person at this time is working in this area, cannot be doing something else in other places. So it's basically a planned use exceed availabilities, available supply. And when the resources are over allocated, either more resources are required or rescheduling. So is whether you take more resources, like more human, or you stretch your schedule. And it's also taking advantage of the tasks. Slack can be a free resource. So once you can see that where is the free resource is occupied, and if between 2 days is free, between 2 weeks, there's 1 week free, you can take him and put him in something else. So the slacking time is also important, because if some project has to wait in some task to get the other task, which is that's what you call activities. And during activities, you cannot do anything. So you can take out these human resources or whatever the machinery is and put it in something like. As also shows you, the progress tracking is a key feature for the managing project as they are being completed. So where are they? Has been completed? What part of it is doing? Now, let's take one step behind, and it comes in with, let's say within the software, let's think about project implementation and project management for the software. This is software, but it can be very applicable to other projects also. And the whole starts from people not paying enough time and attention to implementation and software selection or product selection. And it's funny thing, 60% within the software industries, could be more in other industries or less, 60% they would run to a problem, 30% would not select the same solution. And the reason, because they have utilized somebody else knowledge, that he probably outsider, that he has some bias, or a salesperson who's trying to sell you the equipment or certain thing. And 20% is fail, and this is a lot, which is especially in IT, the 20% fails, that the highest in probably other project management selection. Now, this is also for the software, but also is applicable for any other product. Is the first is just like a selecting the right products for the project, or the right softwares for the implementation. It's like a hierarchies, but it's like a pyramid. So you need to go with the basic, start building the basic properly, all right, and then you build things on it. But this thing is made of three parts. The part is the objective, which is very clear, you know what you want, and it's a black and white. Then you get the subjectives, and then you get the perspective, the whole view. And start with the objective, which is here is like a functionalities and technology comes in the very objective side. And then you go with market data, the marketing information, and your RFP reviews, which is becomes semi-objective, subjective, but is still in the field of subjective. And then you got probably scripted scenario and easy to use, because the reason is sometimes the scripted scenario is very limited, and also scripted scenario means you have you bring the people who is technical from the supplier side and the sales people and whomever there, and you give them certain questions scripted, and they have to show you how it's done. And then you got as we said, number 6, which is a scripted scenario. Number 6, easy to use. And easy to use is a very subjective, because for me could be very easy and for you could be very difficult. For the next guy would be a mediocre, and some of them they don't. So they don't know how to use it. So that's is kind of a subjective. And then what comes in process fit. Because of process, we in some time, most of the time, we are very flexible in the process. And usually these company suppliers, they can fit lots of process, but also they have the best practice they collected from their previous histories working. So they also, if you have a choice between having your process fit their ways or their ways fitting your process. And then the last thing you look at it is the reference. Most of people, when they do select, they go with the reference first, which is, that doesn't make, that's a good, way of failing. Because whatever works for other factories and company does not mean work for you. So there is a project charter, and you start with outlining the project, and you do the objectives, and then you divide the roles and responsibilities over them. And then you set up a plan, which is, it's also a project management plan. And you divide the task, and then within the task, you want to do a subtask. And then, for example, in selecting cases, you can do a research. And then once you're done with the research, you start evaluation, and then you do the collection, selection, and then you select the final. So there is a process, because it's sensitive when you select something, because maybe not everybody is agreeing with you. So they might sabotage the thing. So you want everybody to get involved. SMEs, subject matter expert, also it should be getting involved with it. In general, once you select the software and you select all hardwares and all these things, you start coming up with a project plan and project management, as we said. In the project management, you will be defining things in phases, or in these phases or milestones. Is you start with a phase 1, which is, in a phase 1, is a definition, they call it, and it's a plan organization. You set the business and the project objectives. You plan the infrastructures and hardwares for it, if there is a hardware needed, if there is a basic things you need to build. And you're gathering business requirement from SMEs, from the people who's going to work on it. You do a data consolidations, and data migration, identify if there is a gap, finalize the business process, and do the customer review. Each one of them is a total work and detailed work. So a project manager has kind of his hand is full, And the output of that is scoping document, clearing what's the gap, and project plan. So you need to know when this project goes live, where is the gaps? Where are the things that is not meeting you before it goes live so you can narrow and close the gap. The second phase that you do is the pre-implementation, which is in the pre-implementation, basically you build the solution component and the solution moves to the development. You finalize, get ready plan, get approval, and you finalize training plan if there is a training which is needed. And the output of that phase two, the pre-implementation, is configuration document, information, how they can document, and UTA, or what do you call, acceptance uh, preparation, because you need the management also approve it and accept it. And the final VIP, which is the project implementation. Now, then you go to the phase, implementing phase, which is implementing customization, execution, get ready plan, executing, user acceptance test. Here you do finalizing user acceptance test cases. What's the cases here? And here you provide the cases for them. And plan to go live, and the stress testing. You want to see whether the machines can hold on with the producing 1,000 unit or can do only 800 units, something like that. So you do a stress testing. And then the output, it comes in with the implementation gap, user training, and executing of user acceptance tests. Here's where the users will be accepting this thing. And then in the phase of operation, then you need to go live, plan for the post implementation. If there is, gaps you need to close, or, work more. And you do the data migration if it's necessary, if required, to confirm that there is a contingency plan, and you go live. Once you go live, there is a post implementation, which is here where you do complete the project. You want to close the project, which is sign off, and the sign off happens when the acceptance happens, and extensive support from from 1 to 2 months, because the users would have a hard time in the beginning to use it, but then when they get used to it, they start using it. And then you get the major objectives. If there is objectives, you try to solve them, analyze the result of audit, and make a future plan for further implementation, further adjustment, order management, something like that in these fields. So the output would be a support, close the project, and get audited to see that whether you have delivered on the functional requirements, or the workload at the in that time, or before or after time, or and at the cost that is looking for. So the project management has to be simplified implementation, minimizing the risk, prove the process, and a flexible approach. Now, there is, to do that, to evaluate these process, you don't wait until the end of the project going live and then you say whether they have delivered things on time with the budget and they delivered exactly that we required on it, which is you do it in while they're moving, so if they are really coming short or way ahead or they're doing really well. And this is done through, could be earned value management, which is EMV. And EMV is the technique. The technique is a technique for measuring a project process. So project progress, project process or project in an objective, clear manner. Has the ability to combine the measurement of the scope, schedule, and cost. So we looks at the scope and the schedule and cost. Scope, time, and cost. So there is a the triangle made of three, each one which is, and if you want to minimize the timing, you might need to increase the cost or reduce the scope, because these three triangle has to be connected to each other. If you want to minimize the cost, you probably want to minimize the time or the scope also. There is, this is would be a duty of the project manager to work on that detail. And it's also provide a method for evaluating the relative success of a project, as we said. So what do you do for a project EMV, EVM? What's the essential features of it? It's basically you do a project plan that identify the activities to be accomplished. You bring your project plan. And you put an evaluation of each activities. You put a pricing or unit that you can measure it. And then you define the predefined earning or costing rules to quantify the accomplishment. How much each one unit, how much is worth, how much is costing, how much is value is there in it. These are the samples. We will go through a few of them to, to look at the earned value, how it's done. Here we're just gonna take a look at it, which is called budget cost, scheduled, and actual cost, and budget cost of scheduled and performance, the budget cost and actual. See, sometimes if you compare the actual cost to the budget, to work budgeted cost, it's not showing you whether you are delivering, because you might be not working and consuming some money. So the actual cost is going high, but you're not delivering the project. So there is more involved in doing that. When you do that, it's basically you take in, if you the project tracking without EVM, what will happen here? We said that you do a simple comparison of just cost versus budget does not tell this whole story. For example, if you look at here and you have the BCWS, which stands for budget cost of work schedule, and then you have the actual accounting or the actual cost, which is you get it from the accounting department, and you just look at this and you say, wow, in the beginning, our actual cost is high, but at week 5, we managed to minimize actual cost. And we're doing well with the budgeted cost, but it means without a means of quantifying how much work has been accomplished, costs are the only available information. So we don't know how much work has been accomplished. We know how much is actual cost and how much these guys are taken out from the budget. So here we see that in a project appears to be covered from, as we said, work 1 to 4, the actual costs exceed the budget. So the actual costs exceed the budget. But then you would see that the actual cost, the project appears under budgeted, because the project tracking without earned value is inclusive. So because in this case, in the beginning, the budget and this person who's in charge of that budget is taking too much money, out of that, and then when it comes in the middle of week four and goes upper, you will see that the accountants start not giving them enough money. So like, you see that the gaps differentiate between both of them. But when you are involving project tracking with the EMV, with a predefined method of quantity quantifying the quantity of work accomplished, EMV provide much more information. You need to see what work you quantify. You put units of delivering and you put a value on them. So here where you got a budget cost of work scheduled, which is BCWS, and then you get the budget cost of work performed, done. And then you do a unit and you put a pricing on it. And then you see the EMV project confirmation out of the performance according to the schedule. So you look at here and BCWS, which is the schedule one, stands there according to the plan. But then we see that the performed work is higher, but it then is going down. And this is why really the AC, the actual cost is going down, because the budget cost for work performed is not, done accordingly. Because, for example, you bring a machine and the machine costs money and you work on it. Now, if you don't bring the machine, the cost doesn't shows. I mean, so your actual cost is down, but you still have the people who is sitting there doing nothing, which is they are consuming the budget. So the issue is at week 1 to 5 here, it shows the project is ahead of the schedule in a week. Okay, because you look at it and you see the points in it. But after the 6 weeks, the project is falling behind the schedule, and then you need to dig in why this project is behind the schedule and what you can do with it about it. Now, with the predefined method of qualifying the quantity of work accomplished, EMV has much more information there. So you're not going to go only with the budgeted cost for schedules. You utilize this budget cost for work performed, and the work performed, which we said you need to divide it in unit, put money on that value on it. And here it's very clear that the project is showing that the project is under budget in the term of actual work performance. So the project is under budget. They are not giving enough budget to the project for the work. So people are putting more time, free time for their free time, or they trying to utilize other utilities, other things that is not supposed to be used here. So this way, how you analyze the project, whether it's software, hardware, whatever, it doesn't matter. So project tracking all in one is a combined view, gives an overview of project performance in terms of the original plan. So you have an original plan, and then you will see work performing, whether it is accordingly through using the budget itself, through using the dollar sign, and what's the actual cost. And it's justifiable now because this is the work plan and this is what is being delivered. And according to what's being delivered, the actual cost is in parallel. So if the management comes to you and says, you're behind in the schedule, you can tell them, well, my cost is lower, and my cost is lower. Now you need to find the reason why. The other way of looking at it is another example here is probably you have a multiple activities and not one activity. And there is a milestone or timing milestone. And then when you look at the milestone, you see the timing, you see where is the activity A, B, C, and they not be connected or connected to each other. And this is how you do the calculation. So activity A could be you're delivering everything at the X time. It's your milestone. And then you get the B, you have managed to deliver only 80% of actual work, and for some reason you left at 20% of it, and so already there is a budget of 10,000 for over it, for all of it. So activity B is only 80% completed, and the budget cost was $10,000. So there is worth of 20% is not being delivered, and this is at the X point, still the thing. And then and another example like activity C, there is only 70% of budget is completed, and then you have by the time of this timing should be 80% is done. So you see there is only 70%. So there is a 10% is behind of your work, and there is a 20% expected. So you have 30% is not done at the X time, which is the 20% of it is not necessary now, but the 10% is you are behind. It shows where you are behind, how far. And there is activity D, which is you're supposed to start a little bit before the X time, which is the milestone time, and you have not started it. And that also can help you in the timing and the slacking time also, because if the activity D is not important, not crucial to other activities, you can wait and focus on other activities to finish activity C and B, for example. So the budgeted cost of work schedule is the budget when they set up is like we said 80,000, 10,000, and there is supposed to be 80% is finished, which is 16,000, but we have only 70%. And here we're supposed to finish 15%, which is nothing done, but we have spent $6,000 already. And you add them all, and this is a budgeted cost for work schedule. What is that? That's what's supposed to be spent for delivering that work. But the budgeted cost of the work performed, which is we said that in the activity you finished it and you are really doing a good job and you have managed to finish everything, which is worth of $18,000. In the activity B, you've done 10% of it, 80% of it, still there is a 20%, but their budget is still, there is $2,000 you can consume it if you did not consume it. And the activity C, as we said, you are at the 70 and supposed to be 80, but 70% you're supposed to be consumed and on not 80%. And that's a $14,000. And activity D, you did not start anything, so you should not be taking money, but you saw in the budgeted, there is something like $6,000. So the budgeted cost of work performed is you add them together and you have $40,000. And the reason you do that, because you want to see the schedule variance. Where are you behind? So the BCWP minus the work scheduled costing is you already $10,000 in the hole. And you do the schedule performance index. So what's the percentage you're doing? And then which is called SPI. And then you have the cost variance, which is the CV, which is we showed it in the schedule where, where this goes, the BCWP, if it's higher than the cost or lower than the cost. But also, the final thing that you're looking at, most important thing is the PI. And if the PI, for performance indicator, if the PI is lower than 1, costs are higher than the plant. So your cost is way higher than your plan. But if it's equal, you get exactly the cost at any point is exactly matching the plan. And if it's the PI is higher, means the cost is lower than the plan. So if you're planning like 100,000, but the cost is 150,000, something like that. So, but when you do a project planning and project implementation, there is a thing that's called a network planning. Things are connected to each other. You're networking them. And some of them, they have to be done in parallel, some of them connected to each other. And it's used for something called CPM. And now, a project is made up of sequence of activity that form a new network representative of the project. We said that. The path taken the longest is that the activity is called the critical path. And the critical path provide a wide range of scheduling information useful in managing your project. We look at the critical path because we want to get more information. It can help us in understanding how the project is going on. Because on a short time, you might be doing when I ask you, have you done this? And you go, yes, I've done it. Because it's a small unit work of one day and you look very impressive. But if I'm asking you within a week, what you done? You cannot say I've done this only. You need to show me the whole week. So it's showing a real variation if there is any. So it used a critical, which called the critical path method, which is help to identify the critical path in the project, which is you look at them and you see where you're looking at, which is usually the longest one. Now, why the critical path or method or CPM is used to identify each activity to be done and estimate how long it will take to complete. As we said, there's a 1 week work and there is a 2 months work. And you could look very good if I'm asking you about 1 week work, but if I'm asking you about 1 month work, you might be 2 weeks behind. Determine the required sequence of activities and construct a network diagram. So the long path would show me what's the sequence supposed to be and what things has to be done. And then we can determine the critical path and determine the early start. When can we finish early? When can we start early? When we can be starting late? And what's the latest time? What's the earliest time that we can finish? And vice versa. As example, it's just an example. We don't need to look at this, but this is like we need to design and then we build a prototype. And if we don't build a prototype after 21 weeks, we need to go back and finish the design first. So these are intermediate predecessors, and we cannot finish C without finishing an A, which is C is evaluate equipment. So these are the activities, and this is the designation for them, and showing me what do I need to build a prototype, B, which is here, I need an A to be done. Now, here in the bracket, when you see is times of the week. So in the designing, it takes me 21 weeks. To reach to the G2, it takes 21 plus 7 plus 8, which is 15, 35, 36, plus 2, 37. And then you check this path and add them together and see which one is longer, that you need to look at it as a critical path. So the critical path is basically, it shows that A to C to F to G to do this thing. And these are things could be working parallel, could be working into dependence. One project, as we said, there is a different task that has to be done, and sometimes could be integrated. And this is the critical first, when you define the first critical path, and it's easy for you to define the second critical path, which is, it cannot be this, the critical path usually is the longest one. So the issue here is critical path method with activity time estimated. Is always there is a time estimated in it. And when you do a critical path, remember we said when activity times vary, a single time estimation may not be reliable. So, and it's happening when you talk to somebody, when you this finishes between 2 to 3 weeks. He is, and if I'm lucky, I finish it in 1 week. So this is what you call really a vary time. And instead of estimating 3 values, you do the optimistic, the pessimistic, and most likely. So this allows the calculation of a probability estimate of completion time. This distinguishes the characteristics of the PERT method. Its critical path is driven, it started in DuPont, and PERT started in the States, but now everything is called critical path, which is you use the optimistic, the pessimistic, and the most likely. I mean, we said that if we're lucky, we finish it in 1 week. If we are average, 2 to 3 weeks, and if we're running into problems, 4 weeks maximum finish. This is very important to understand whether we have managed the well or not. Now, time cost model and project crashing. Now, as we said, there is a 3 things involved in any project. Is time, cost, and things that need to be delivered. So sometimes the boss comes to you and says, okay, we need to deliver it in 2 weeks instead of 3 weeks. That means you ask for more resources, which is more cost, or you tell them, well, we can cut these corners, cut all these things, which is, the whole thing does not deliver the important things can deliver. And in the time cost model, the extension of a critical path model that considers the trade-off between time to complete an activity and the cost, and we'll show it in the graph. So you need to consider the direct activity cost and indirect cost of a project and the activity of completion. An attempt to develop a minimum cost schedule for the entire project. So it doesn't have to be your boss telling you, if you can, do it in trying to cut down on the timing or the thing, you will be cutting down on the cost itself sometimes. And the thing is, you need to crashing the project at a certain time to be delivered and certain services. Now there is a trend these days that's happening and is very useful is when you do a project implementation, you might want to first start something and have things as rolling, and then you add more functionalities, more requirement, but you have to put the project into a role. And this will be talking about it probably in later chapters, different project management. So the project crashing means that the compression of time to complete a project. And this is how it's done, is basically you prepare a CPM type network, and we talked about the critical path and CPM type, and determine the cost per unit of the time to expedite each activities. Then you start computing, as we said, the critical path, and then you shorten the critical path at the least cost. So you try to shorten it at the least cost possible, and then you plot a project indirect and total cost curve to find the minimum cost schedule. It looks like this. Basically, at the first thing, you have a normal cost, which is you can deliver activities, 6 activities at time 1 and time 2. So normal cost is the lowest expected activities cost. Then you have the normal time, which is the time associated with each normal cost. And then you have the crash time, which is the shortest possible activity time. And then you have the crash cost, which is the cost associated with the shortest. It's basically time versus money. And here, what you have, for example, at $10 or $10,000 or whatever, the first stage we said we try to build the critical path and then see if you can lower the timing for it with the costing in it. So first of all, the second step after you see building this, you just try to do the cost timing unit. So you say that at the $10 cost, you don't need to do that calculation, but you need to understand the concept behind it. Is 1 unit, you can do it at the $6, or which is, that's what you call a crash cost, and $10 a normal cost. So at after 2 weeks, you can do the normal cost and the normal time, doing only 6 units. But here, what you ask is to do 1 unit at $10, which is a crash cost and crash time. So what you do is you cost per unit time. So you do the crash time and the crash cost, normal cost, and the crash cost were divided by normal time and crash time. So what do? You basically, you find an option, second option. It says, and you know in the project, there's always a variation. So you say, if I'm putting a pressures on my team, it's gonna cost me that much, and it's gonna finish in shorter time and that much. But if we go normal, it's gonna cost us that much, higher a little bit, and a longer time or a normal time, something like that. So you do these and you find in this timing, what's the unit cost, and this timing, what's the unit cost, and you do the division as we here indicated. This is only a sample. So as we said, is a $10 versus $6, which is 1 unit, and the cost per day to expedite to get is only $4. So can you reduce $4 in activity? But which comes to the activity B, you also do the same thing, and the third one, and shows you how much cost per unit if you crashing the thing, it will generate for you. So then you compute the critical path according to according to the crash times, and if you can do it, then you're doing, it's just how to save the implementation. Now, here's the assignment that I would like you to do, and it's according to the previous chapter that we've taken. Basically, I will supply you this, and basically is I need you to look at something called One Global. And by the way, look at it, check the suppliers, and then understand I'm sorry, check the consumers, what they're consuming, and then understand their operation, how it's done. And I want you to set up the best supply of this operation. How the supply for this operation, because there is a consumer who wants to buy and consume. They will pay. How you work out the supplier, it's just like, but this is in the field of IT. If you want to sell food, how you supply the sandwiches to put the meat inside or whatever the food inside. You need to look at that. And you need to look at how you supply the meat, how you get the operation of the supply, you need to see it. I will explain more in the class, but this is the link that you need to look at it and then understand the business. And I think it's a good idea to start with the global one. And maybe the most complete one is the one OG Money. And this is an application, you can download it to understand better on your mobile. So by here we're done.